Hello everyone and welcome to my next episode of Melyn Talks. Here we're going to be talking about team fighting, specifically talking about team fighting as Zyra support and mid. Although most of the information in this video is going to be quite applicable to team fighting as basically any champion in the game, alright? Mostly we're going to be talking about in-depth team fighting things and common misconceptions like what it is, what to do, what to be thinking about, and especially what to do as Zyra, mostly in the second half. As always, this video is going to be kind of long, so feel free to check out the timestamps in the video description, or go ahead and watch it on 1.5 speed or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, let's get to it, alright? So, the reason I wanted to talk about team fighting is that I believe it is one of the most difficult things to do in League of Legends, alright? And this is for a variety of reasons. Maybe primarily because it's really hard to quantify how good or how badly you're doing in these team fights, okay? Like specifically, like if you're laning, right? Oh, I died. Oh, I must have messed up. Oh, I killed them. I must have done well. Oh, I'm up 20 CS. I'm great. I'm down 20 CS. Laning is very, very easy to see what's going on. There are numbers that you can tell. But in team fighting, it's like, okay, well, I killed someone, but I lost the team fight. Was that my mistake? Was that my teammate's mistake? What could I have done better? Could I have done anything better? Like there's so much unknown in an actual team fight, which is why there's so many misconceptions and people will have incorrect views on like how good they are and how good their teammates are and stuff like that. So it's really hard to quantify it. And furthermore, team fighting is right in, say you're having a 40-minute game, how much of that is actually team fighting? It's one of the least we don't practice it. We don't get very much practice in it because we're not team fighting very often. So a lot of times in team fights, we're just going to be getting into this state of mind where it's like, oh, spam all my buttons, try to win the team fight. And that's really suboptimal. And we don't usually get a lot of feedback from ourselves unless we're like paying for coaching or something on what we could have done better, what to do better next time. So it's really hard to improve at team fighting. It takes a lot of self-awareness, VOD reviews, stuff like that to actually improve in this regard. All right, so that's why I wanted to make this video about team fighting. It's really important and it's very hard and hard to kind of think of and improve upon. All right, so you know, in this vein, it's very misunderstood. There's a lot of myths about team fighting that we're going to get into in this video. And a lot of people have incorrect assumptions about how they perform and how their teammates perform. And again, another difficulty in team fighting is that it's very fluid, it's very dynamic, right? There's no set rule of what you should always be doing in any given team fight. Even again, and we'll get into this later, even if you have the same 10 people in 2 games in a row, what you're going to be doing is going to be crazy different between the games. It's even going to be different in different individual team fights in this certain game, okay? So you always have to be aware. You always have to constantly ask yourself, whenever there's downtime in your League of Legends game, ask yourself, okay, next team fight, let's see, what am I going to do? Who's the most fed person on their team? Who do I need to protect on my team? Who do I need to attack? Do we want to fight in a choke? Do we want to fight in the open space? Where do we want to fight? What am I going to use my spells on? What am I going to save my E for? What am I going to use my ultimate? You have to always be asking yourself this. There should never really ever be dead time in a League of Legends game because you always want to be thinking about the next step, whether strategically for like map movements and stuff, or just for where you are individually, all right? So there's a whole bunch of things you need to be thinking about, and we're going to be talking about a lot of them in this team fighting video, okay? So let's start with the first section. That there's actually multiple different ways to win a team fight, okay? So a lot of times think, okay, I'm gonna blow up their squishies. All right, I just need to kill their carries. I just need to kill their carries. That's not true. I mean, sometimes it can be true, especially if you're something like a LeBlanc or like a Fizz or some kind of assassin. Yeah, you want to kill their carries usually. But even then, it's not all the time. There's a lot of different ways to win a team fight, a lot of different ways to succeed. But the bottom line is this. You want to maximize your entire team's damage and minimize, you know, the damage your entire team takes. It's a group thing. It's not, you're not trying to maximize your damage. You're not trying to minimize the damage you take. It's all about your entire team maximizing their damage and minimizing how much damage your team takes. So there's a lot of ways to do this. And a lot of times it is just killing their carries because carries deal the most amount of damage. But sometimes you can't do that without killing your entire team, in which case it's not worth it, all right? So you don't always want to be killing the carries. Again, we're going to get into that later in the video when we talk about target target prioritization and stuff like that. But anyway, that's the idea. Like, it's a very simple idea, but you need to really understand it, that is the hard and fast rule, as opposed to focusing whoever, right? Some other things, how to win a team fight. Sometimes you don't have to deal damage. And it sounds counterintuitive given my most recent point, but and I get a lot of flack for this, and it's kind of a meme on my stream, but if you use your ultimate and your ult does 0 damage and it gets 0 knockups and it doesn't enrage any plants, it can still be a good ult, right? Say they have somebody who's flanking us, like this happened recently with a Kled flanking us, and I ulted their entire team, and it didn't hit anyone. But in those like 2 or 3 seconds that my ult was up, it gave us like 2 or 3 seconds of 1v5 time on their Kled. Just exhaust the Kled, kill him. Team fight won. Ult didn't do any damage, but if you can use your spells, especially your ultimate, to get enemy people out of the fight not contributing, then they're not dealing damage. Again, maximizing your team's damage, minimizing the opponent's team's damage. All right. So sometimes don't always focus on dealing the maximum amount of damage. A lot of times it can be zone control as well. And the final thing I want to bring up in this ways to win a team fight is that dying's not always bad, and conversely, getting kills is not always good. Okay, so say you are a 15 kill Zyra, all right, and you're trying to carry your team. You know, you're doing your best. And then you flash engage and suicide for their like 1 kill Malzahar or something, and you're like, oh, I got 1 for 1, why is my team losing? No, you have 15 kills. You have a way greater responsibility than going 1 for 1. Okay, dying in that case, or getting a kill in that case, is wrong. Or also like staying alive but not really doing any meaningful damage would also be wrong, you know? So you always have to get past the idea of dying and killing is inherently bad and good, respectively, okay? The important thing is to do as much as you can. A lot of times you'll die, but if you get this great ult and amazing plants deal an absurd amount of damage for like your team to clean up, that's a great way to die, all right? And you wouldn't be able to do that sort of thing if you made sure you lived, okay? So just get that out of your head whenever you're thinking about team fighting, is that it's okay to die sometimes as long as you make your death worth it. And again, don't tunnel so far onto a kill that you're not actually able to do everything you can in a team fight. All right, dying's not always bad, kills are not always good. The next section is also going to be a very, very important, and that's going to be target focus. Okay, so the thing, target prioritization and target focus is, again, very, very misunderstood. We always have, you know, the whole, everyone says, oh, don't focus the tanks, don't focus the tanks, always focus the AD carries. That is garbage, right? I mean, both of those are going to be garbage. You don't want to focus the tanks all the time. You don't want to focus the carries all the time. It's way too binary. There's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be situations. There's always going to be so many variables that you can't just boil it down to something so simple. Okay? Because again, you want to do as much damage as you can. You want to take as little damage as you can. And again, that's your entire team, not just you personally. Okay? So, you know, if their tanks overdive, if they overextend, that's when you want to say, okay, let's kite back, let's take down their tanks. Or maybe if their carries are mispositioned, you say, no, focus the carries right there. They're way up in the front. Kill the carries, stuff like that. Positioning is huge for actually your target prioritization. And Zyra's capable of doing so many things. She's capable of being that backline peeler. She's capable of one-shotting a carry, even as a support, but especially as a mid laner, right? So she's so good at so many different things. You have so much potential. You're just very, very squishy. So your own position is going to be very key. And I didn't actually put a section in this video for positioning, so I'll talk a bit about it now. Usually you're going to want to be in the very back of a team fight, and if you can't reach their carries, it's going to be okay most of the time, unless they have like a 20 kill Jinx or something that will destroy your team unless she's killed. you're going to want to be in the back unless they're so fed. Or for example, if you have like 3 divers on your team, you might want to support them as well. Or you could again just stay in the back and say, okay, my divers are going to be fine, I'm going to protect my back line and stuff like that. So the main thing to position on Zyra is just realize, you know, how squishy you are. And if you overextend, even for an amazing play, you'll probably die. And sometimes that's worth it, but sometimes it's not. So you just need to always be conscious of that fact. So much of this video is just things to tell you to be aware of, but you know, you can't obviously be aware of like 15 different things at once, but there are things to be aware of every once in a while so you get into good habits, okay? So tying into target focus is playing to your strengths. You know, I mentioned this earlier, but say we had two different games with identical team comps, you can have radically different prioritizations in each of the games for who you're going for and stuff like that. And a lot of it depends on who in your game is doing well. Right? So if your front line is doing very well, usually you're going to want to back them up and be like, okay, I want to go with my front line. I want to put pressure on their back line, stuff like that. But say you have, again, like a 10 kill Jinx on your team, then you don't want to dive. You don't want to dive. Your Jinx is going to do everything for you, right? So all you have to do is keep the Jinx alive and you'll win the game, okay? Or win the fight at the very least. And it boils down to something very simple here, okay? And I don't think this is talked about enough. It's looking at the strength of each team's front line relative to the opponent's back line, right? So in other words, whose front line is going to die first? All right, so let's say my front line is stronger so they can survive. So if my front line's strong, I can just kill the opponent's front line and know I'll kill the opponent's front line before my front line dies. If my front line is weaker, or conversely that their back line is stronger, then I know, okay, I can't focus there. I can't just peel and kill their tanks because my tanks are not going to survive that long. So what I need to do is I need to take out their backline in that case because their backline is stronger / my front line is weaker, okay? So it all comes down to, you know, if we have these two things, these two teams meeting and clashing right here, you know, which knuckle is going to break first, or do you need to go for the wrist? This is a terrible analysis. It's a terrible analogy, but that's the idea, right? If your front line's strong, then you can just you know, stay in the back and you'll win naturally. But if your front line's weak, that's when you have to take out the enemy carries. And of course, you know, if they have a mid laner and an AD carry and one has like way more kills than the other one, sure, you're probably gonna focus one over the other, stuff like that. But again, a lot of it depends on positioning. If someone's overextending, go kill them. Or like I see this a lot with Malzahar. People will make fun of when Malzahar ults a tank, but if a tank overextends or something, the Malzahar ult can buy enough time for your entire team to take him down, and that's 100% the right call, okay? And it's the same thing with Zyra. It's okay to focus a tank sometimes if they overextend, or if your front line can buy enough time for you to get through their tanks, stuff like that. All right, so always be aware of whose back line is stronger / whose front line is stronger, okay, for your target prioritization a lot of the times. And also Zyra is a very big AoE mage, so a lot of times you're just going to want to try to cause as much havoc as possible. And again, we're going to get into more about that in a later section as well. So now we're going to get more into Zyra specifically. So her role in a team fight and specifically how you should be using your abilities in these team fights, okay? So she has, I think, 2 primary roles in a team fight, and you know they very much correlate to, you know, front line versus back line. She's very good at being a defensive peeling mage, DPS mage, you know, where you can take down their front line, take down their tanks. Or she's also good as an offensive nuking mage, right? She's very good at one-shotting, especially if you itemize for, because again, a lot of which role she fits better depends on her itemization. Are you building flat penetration and a Hextech item, or are you building CDR and maybe like Leandries or something for taking down the tanks? You know, really depends on what your build is going for as to what you're going to be better at. And again, usually it doesn't matter for these roles whether you're a mid laner or a support. A support can one-shot just as I'm not just as good as a mid laner, obviously, but a support can definitely one-shot squishies. A mid laner can definitely find success just by peeling and stuff like that. So all of this stuff I'm going to say, it works for mid and support. You're just going to usually be more fed as mid laner, okay? And again, when to do each of these roles, you know, peeling and DPS or nuking their squishies really depends on the whole frontline versus backline question. And it's something you always need to ask yourself, okay, how strong is our frontline? Stuff like that. So then there's this sort of third role that, again, people make fun of me for. It's Zyra as zone control, okay? If you can prevent people from even entering the fight, that's a win. It basically makes things temporary. 4v5s, 3v5s, 2v5s, whatever, okay? So a lot of times that's going to be your plant placement and your ultimate placement. We're going to get into those more in the next section, all right? But be aware that sometimes the best way to win a fight is just to prevent the enemy team from getting into the fight, all right? Because yeah, in general, if you can separate the front line from the back line, it's an easy team fight win. Last thing I want to talk about for Zyra's role in team fights is engaging. Okay, so this is one of the probably most common mistakes I see Zyra players making, and I do it sometimes on my stream just to, you know, try to make those big YouTube plays or something. But rule of thumb for engaging is never do it. Just don't even try. Okay. Zyra is garbage, is a garbage engager. She is terrible at it. She has amazing disengage. Her actual engage is terrible. She's super squishy, so if she's in the front trying to engage, it's very easy to get picked off. Your spells move like snails. Your E has an incredible travel time, and it's not very wide. Don't even get me started about how if you try to ER someone and ult immediately, most champions have a dash and they won't even get knocked up by your ultimate, or maybe not even hit by the damage of it, okay? So just don't engage most of the time, and especially don't flash engage unless they're already CC'd. Your E has like a 0.25, it's at least a 0.25 second cast animation, and it's super slow. So flash Eing is really only going to work if people aren't paying attention, or if you have some kind of other long range CC like an Ash arrow or something like that, in which case it would be okay to flash E. But then again, in that case it's like the Ash is engaging, so it's still not even you really engaging, okay? So yeah, be very careful with your flash, unless again you know it's a bad idea and you want to make a big play anyway. You can do that, but it's not a good idea. Do as I say, not as I do. All right. And finally, if you are going to engage, the best way to do it is from Fog of War. It gives you a much bigger chance. They can't see you cast your E, and a lot of times they don't see the E until it's already on top of them. So if you want to wait for a brush ambush, or if you want to ward over the wall and do something maybe near like your Wraith camp or something, that can be a very good thing to do, especially if you're losing and you don't really win even team fights. If you can set up some kind of brush or Fog of War ambush from outside the vision that the enemy doesn't expect, it can be a great way to get your team back into the game, or at the very least buy your team some time. I will say the most important thing to do when you are doing an ambush is make sure you have a pink ward or a sweeper, because if you wait for an ambush and the enemy team knows you're there, it's gonna get really ugly really fast. So make sure they have no vision when you're doing an ambush, okay? Although it can lead to some interesting results, but I won't get into those right now. So the last major section, but a few more sections after this, is your abilities and when to use each of your abilities, how to use them, and stuff like that. Okay, we're gonna go through them down the line, but the main thing is just to save your spells. The temptation and an easy way to mess up is just to use your spells too early, okay? When in doubt, just hold on it for maybe like 1 second. Say, do I really need to use this? Because it's very tempting to be like, oh my gosh, we're fighting QWER. And then be like, wait, I missed everything and I'm useless now. And I mean, I do that all the time, right? So that's the temptation. So in general, when in doubt, wait, okay? So your Q is something you don't really have to wait for. You can kind of use your Q to spam. You can kind of spam it, use it for damage over time. You can use it to spawn plants, and especially watch for your passive seeds that are spawning in the middle of the fight. You want to always spawn them up, especially like not even especially late game, mid game, early game. So much of your damage is plants, as long as they're not getting instantly killed. Okay, so also if you have level 1 Q, your Q is basically just a plant spawning tool. So don't be afraid to use your your Q. You can use it on tanks. You can use it just for plants, even if it misses all enemy champions. That's fine. It's kind of the exception of this rule. Your W, of course, is going to be spawning these seeds, which are going to in turn spawn plants, and you're usually going to want to save it for your Q plants. I think E plants are a little overrated. The slow is actually quite nice, but their range is so absurdly small. So if you want a slow for like peeling, or if you get a good root on an engage, then you're gonna do an EW, and you will have a slow plant. But otherwise, just use Q plants. It's okay to do double Q plants as well, even in the same location. You don't have to use the Ws on 2 different Qs. Double Q plants are really solid, especially if you're gonna be using your ultimate, and it's a big team fight, so you already have slows probably. But please, for the love of all that is good, for the love that is all that is not, for the love, well, all right, that phrase is not working for me, but please do not ever use 2 E plants. It is terrible. Okay, there is I think there is actually 0 situations where using a double E plant is the right call. Give me a YouTube comment if you can think of one. I can't think of any though. 2 E plants, the slows don't stack. It's very unlikely they'll even be attacking different targets, and the range is so short that it usually makes your plants just utterly useless. All right, so try to get at least 1 Q plant, or even 2 Q plants is okay, especially if you have Rylai's. Get 2 Q plants. All right, so that's it for your W. For your E, again, the biggest thing is just to save this spell. Okay, it's a 12-second cooldown with no CDR. It's gonna take forever to get back up, even with max CDR, 45% CDR. It's gonna be what, 6 point something seconds or something, or maybe even 7 seconds. I can't do the math in my head. It's barely even gonna ever be up twice in one team fight. So make sure when you E that it really counts. Okay, try to get as many people as you can. Make sure it hits, or you can use it for a slow plant again if you need it for the peeling. A lot of times the best time to use your E, especially if you have targeted CC on your team, is to wait for someone to CC and watch that little white bar that trickles down that shows how long they have to be stunned, and land your E right before the stun is over, so they're locked into place for extra time. And if they're stunned, you can't miss it, which is not completely true. I miss stun targets all the time, especially if they're knocked up, because then you actually can't see the model. Anyway, that's a tangent. Okay, so E, save your E, please, please, please. All right. And it can be really effective in like chokes when enemy teams are diving into you, comboed with your ultimate. You can immediately ult. You don't have to wait for your root to land, although no, that's a different story as well. All right. And finally, we're going to talk about our ultimate, and this is going to be the longest part of the section because there's so many things to think about when using your ultimate. Okay, there's a lot of different ways to use it, but again, it's so huge. It can single-handedly win or lose a team fight sometimes. So don't use it too early, and don't waste it, and be aware of all the different ways that there are to use an ultimate. You know, we all have these dreams of these legendary 5-man ultimates, like in a sea of plants, but that's very rarely going to happen. And a lot of times you shouldn't have that be like your standard of, oh, if I didn't get that, it was a bad ult or something like that. So a lot of times you want to wait for the opponent to commit before using your ultimate, because if they haven't committed yet, they're just going to walk right out of it and be like, see ya. And then you're left without this giant cooldown unless you have a lot of CDR, and Zyra's ult is a game changer. Okay, so make sure you save it for when they've already committed, when they're diving into you. And then there's kind of 3 major ways that you can use your ultimate. Okay, you can use it as a DPS tool with the damage from your ultimate, as well as enraging the plants that are inside your ultimate. So again, you always want to place your ultimate over your plants. Doesn't need to be directly over them, it can be to the side. Also remember that you can actually spawn plants while the ultimate's going off, and they still will be enraged. So don't be afraid to RQW as opposed to QWR or something like that. That's fine, perfectly fine. The second is using your ultimate as a knockup or for its crowd control, okay? And this can be really useful for peeling and stuff like that. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory. But the third, again, is kind of the less known one, is using your ult as a zoning tool, okay? And this is really good. People will make fun of you, but it's fine. This can be used to split up a fight. It can be used to force enemies towards you or away you. For example, if you're ganking and if you're say I'm a mid lane Zyra and I'm going down bot lane and I'm gonna go gank 2v2, I can place my ult just like completely ahead of the enemy team where there's no way they're gonna walk into it, but then they can't flash over it. And they're committed. We're guaranteeing that we get a few seconds guaranteed them to be fighting us. And if it's 3v2, we should be able to win that pretty easily, okay? Again, you wouldn't do this if your bot lane was low or something, or if you couldn't win without the ultimate. But a lot of times it can be used to force someone into you or force someone away from you. If you're in a fight that you absolutely do not want to take, just place your ult like right on top of you or something and say, okay, if you're gonna kill me, you're gonna commit and you're gonna be diving into all my plants, all right? And then they might just go, okay, never mind, you know, I didn't sign up for this, and they can run away, okay? So you can definitely use your ult for ways other than the damage and the crowd control, just to kind of corral or herd people to where you want them to go. And that can oftentimes be some of the most beautiful ways to use an ultimate as Zyra, okay? So don't be afraid to do it. So that's basically it for abilities, and I want to have a small section kind of near the end of the video because again, it's something that people miss out on a lot. It's how to use team fight wins to actually help your team win the game, okay? Especially in like lower elos, it's very tempting to win the team fight and be like, oh sweet, let's go home, let's spend our money, I can buy that death cap. Yeah, who needs a sight stone anyway? Stuff like that, right? It can be very tempting to do that, but do not. When you win a team fight, you should always look to gain something. And in a generic order, it should be towers and Baron. That's the best usually. Or dragon, next best. Vision control. Or even if you have all of that, you can at least take some jungle camps, okay? Denying whatever you can when you have a team fight win is very important, okay? And to go with this is don't recall if your team is staying. I don't care if you have like 25 health or something. Unless they have like a, I don't know, like a Jinx ultimate or a Katarina or something like that. They have something with resets. Yeah, you might want to back out if you're low. But even if you're low for most of the time, you still want to hang around and give them support. You can still be spawning seeds from very long range. You can still be like an extra set of eyes, stuff like that. So you can still be useful if you're low. So don't just recall even if you're kind of low and your team is staying to get an objective. Again, unless they have someone who can capitalize on you for like a reset, such as Jinx or Katarina. All right. But also conversely, don't stay if your entire team is recalling. Say I'm in bronze 5 and we just ace. No, we don't ace them. We kill like 4 of them. And my entire team is recalling, and I'm like, hey, we can take this turret right here. So I stay thinking, oh, these stupid bronze scrubs, I'm gonna stay and take this tower, and then I just get soloed or something and just killed by the remaining person. All right, so or like TF ulted or something. Okay, so you know, don't stay, even if it's the right call to stay. Don't stay if your team is leaving, because it is no longer the right call. And a lot of decision making in League, this is a small tangent, but a lot of decision making in League is dependent on what your teammates do. The right decision may be the wrong decision if your team is also making the wrong decision. This is kind of unclear, right? But you see this a lot of times, especially when when talented players are smurfing. I see this a lot when I watch streams, is they'll end up overstaying and be like, where was my support? If my support stayed, it would have been the right decision. Well, yeah, but your support didn't stay. So it's now your wrong decision. And you always need to own up for your own mistakes. If your teammates make a mistake, you have to play the right thing given their mistake, not play the right thing given that they play perfectly. And so it's always, awareness is always important. You can't assume that your team is always going to make the right call and then blame them when you make the wrong call given their action. Okay, that's a tangent though. That's basically it for this video. All right, team fighting, target prioritization, stuff to do with Zyra, don't waste your spells, stuff like that. As always, you can check below the video to find me on Twitter, find me on Twitch. I stream all the time. Find my text guides, find more video resources, stuff like that. Please ask me if you have any questions. I like to answer questions on stream. I can give you the most in-depth answers because we can go back and forth. But if you just have a quicker question, you can drop it in the YouTube comments. I'll get to you on YouTube. You can even ask me on my Twitter, stuff like that. Or Discord is a great place to have conversations as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. You know where to find me by now. If you have any ideas for further videos, I have a few ideas that I'm going to be doing after this. Feel free to ask me or let me know that as well. Feedback is always appreciated on top of that. And I think that's just about it. So thanks for watching, and may your enemies feel the thorns embrace.